Sys.
Video number 6.
Yes.
The soulless mechanics.
Oh, we're just going to talk about mechanisms? Well, first of all, there's people who get mad when you say mechanics because they're like, those are like the guys at Jiffy Lube, and then there's the mechanisms for you sticklers out there.
Yes, we mechanical people are very interested in nuance. Let's talk about. I mean, we've talked about a lot of the story in our other 45 videos that we've made so far. We talked about the world. We talked about the characters and all that kind of stuff. But there's also like kind of a deep mechanical underpinning in this game too, right?
But simple.
Yeah, right. And a lot of that was just me being exceeding the scope of the original project and just forcing a lot of it down your throat.
I genuinely, there were things that when you said this, I was like, you're a disgusting human being, and I don't want any of these things to be in the game. And now I'm like these stupid yellow cubes are like one of my favorite things in the game. And when you told me, I literally was just like, you're dumb. This is dumb. Please stop. Like, please stop trying to make things harder. Let's just get the show on the road.
I can't count how many times Travis has thrown up on me because I've told him this.
Yes, like Brundlefly.
Just like that.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about the Fly movie recently. Sorry. So like a real basic premise in these games, and I actually think the term sandbox game gets really misused because a lot of sandbox games are just pick up and deliver games, but they think they're sandbox games because there's like some light narrative pasted over it. And there's nothing wrong with that because a big part of this is like, how do you encourage players to move around in the world and interact with lots of different stuff. And a good way to do that is to say, you need to go to this place. You need to go to this place and you need to do this thing. And this game absolutely has that, but it is by no means like married to just that concept. We wanted to have a lot of this, like the kind of the thing that you said in terms of like when we talked about like the goal portion of the game before was like you wanted people to do these kind of like incredible stunts, right? Like this, whoa, I managed to pop a wheelie in the middle of the air.
Right.
While lighting a firecracker and opening my Mountain Dew with my feet, and
right.
And I feel like there are like moments like that in the game actually, but not with Mountain Dew branded beverages. Yeah. So the big primary core thing of the game is just you got actions and you do stuff with them, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, on your turn you have 3 actions, right? It's something we've seen in a couple games, right? But there's like a little menu. You just look it up and you just pick your a la carte items. You can move around this world. So, for example, one move will let you cross over 2 borders. And that's how you're getting from place to place. The movement's the boring part, but it's also like, it's kind of the opportunity.
It's the necessary part.
Yeah, right. Like, the amount of movement that you're using, like, how valuable is it? And, like, making sure you're getting the maximum value out of your movement is, like, a really big part of the efficiency. So, like, it might be the boring part, but it's also, like, if you can maximize that, then you're doing well.
Oh, what are some examples of that?
So, like, for example, if depending on where your objectives are, they may be over in certain areas, and, like, you can kind of path yourself in ways that, like, maybe along the way I'm going to stop and smell these certain flowers. So there's always just, like, things that have, like, just, they're always valuable in the game, like getting resources and kind of salvaging these scrap and all kinds of weird stuff at these locations, right? There you go. There are also certain locations like the pylon where you can pick up your gear that you've used, put them back in your hand, and now you get to start over with those. So like that was, again, like the different like waypoints you have along the way to complete those objectives.
There's even avoiding things. Like, for example, like maybe a sandstorm is like ripping through a certain part of the map, and if you walk through that, you'll get hit with 2 damage. Right. When you've only got 7 hit points, that's a lot, right? So that might motivate you. These characters, where these characters are, and like the little benefits they provide, and the fact that you could get a job. Maybe a feed is telling you need to complete a job, so you're like, I'll go to this person, I'll talk to this person, but maybe you don't want to talk to this faction. Maybe you're like, I'm not really interested in this line of play with these guys. I don't really like the kinds of rewards they give me. So I'm going to go a little bit out of my way and go all the way over here, to the cul-de-sac of outer space to talk to this one person in order to get that job, just so that I can literally put a card instead of putting it here, I'll put it here. Yeah. But that means something completely different in terms of how things play out.
Yeah, space has a lot of cul-de-sacs.
Yes.
But connecting with those factions, that's another one of the actions, is if you're in this space with one of these, you can interact with them, you might get a little bonus, and then this will move to a different space on the patrol path. And this is something you hated too, but I love it. It's wonderful. It's my precious.
Well, it's necessary.
Yeah, it is. It's just, the idea is that you don't want people to be able to kind of spam these things, right? So a lot of these little fleeting opportunities that kind of move around the board kind of organically on their own. So the Sanction persona has a little patrol path, and it will move from here up here after being activated. And that all of a sudden, the context of the board changes. So somebody over on that planet says, ooh, now I have this guy over here. Maybe I want to change my mind, right? So the idea is like the tactical framework like changes from turn to turn based on the actions of other players, and it can kind of make you reevaluate your moves.
Well, even the there's layers in there, right? Because the personas, each faction's persona does the same thing on the top part, but on the bottom part, if you pay them, you typically like double what they give out. Like you get like some really cool reward, right?
Yeah.
So you might do that to get the basic thing, push it over to another planet. This character has the resources to get the juicier thing, moves over and is like, thanks. And so there's like this really interesting like interlocking symbiotic type interactive moments.
Right. There's a lot of like opportunism in this. Like every opportunity that you capitalize on might create other opportunities for other players. So you have a choice now. Do you want to be distracted by the beautiful celebrities, or do you want to kind of stay the course? Just stay on target. Right? So we talked about moving, we talked about connecting with the different factions. There are also these locations on the board. These are fixed, they don't move around, but sometimes maybe there's little things that you call into the game that might alter them. But these little locations you can interact with as long as you're adjacent to them in one of the spaces that's touching it. And these locations that you interact with can give you a wide variety of different benefits. For the most part, you're just going there, getting stuff, doing things, turning stuff in. It's just like the necessary things, like the fixed
most of them have a cost associated with them. But like for example, like this little market of cards, the asset queue. So you look and you say, okay, cool, 5 cards that I can buy. But in this game, it's a little more complex than that. It's a little more nuanced than that. So, for example, these uplinks are the only way you can buy the purple cards. The purple cards are one and done. The cool thing is they're super cheap and you can get 2 of them, right? Here in the center of the planet, the Bazaar lets you buy the weapons, the orange cards, and the gear, the blue cards. You can buy any number of those, right? Your grays are worth 1. Your yellows are worth 2. Here comes the thing where I give my credit, where like earlier I was annoyed. But then you have an armory and a black market. And the armory is, naturally, you can only buy weapons. But your little yellow is worth plus $1 of there. But you can only buy 1 weapon, right? So you're getting more mileage out of your resources. And you would not believe such a little thing would motivate a player. They're like, well, I've got 3 of these things. How many weapons are out? And, like, wait, I can spend these 2 and I get the assault pod? You're like, yeah. So it might be a less action efficient, but it's a more resource efficient option. And there's other stuff. And then once they're over, they're like, wait, what else can I do on this planet? And the black market is the same equivalent for the gear. So you have this seemingly complex little market of cards where in other games it'd just be like, I'll pay $3 and get a thing, right? So no, it's where you go, why you go there, what you have when you go there that motivates you for that. And that's like, that's 4 of the types of locations that we have in the game.
Exactly. And that's honestly most of them. Like the other places are like, we've already kind of touched on most of that, is just like interacting with the factions. That's where you go to turn in those reputation points and get those big rewards.
How do you get resources, Mike? What's a way you can get resources in this game?
There's a little reference that tells you how to get all the fun stuff in the game. One of the main ways is to go to the scrapyard, and that's one of the ways we use the tower. The scrapyard is another one of those migrating components. So if you're adjacent to a scrapyard that has this token there, you can interact, and then once you finish, you move this. There are 4 scrapyards, but only 3 tokens. So you move this token to whichever scrapyard doesn't have a token. That's it. And again, that just means that you can't like spam that one section. You can't just like dig deeper for more scrap, right? You got to come back later and maybe there's some more different area or whatever it is, right? But in scrounging for these, that brings us to the dice tower, and I think we might want to come back to that because we got a couple other things to talk about with the action system, right? Yeah. But scrounging just gets you these resources, and you draw them from the bag. Sometimes you get these yellows, and it feels like it's just the absolute jackpot. Yeah. It's the best day of your life. Yeah. It's worth $1 more. I don't know why it's so significant.
No, but it's interesting, right? Like I said, when you first did this, I was just content to have like bits and bobs or whatever, and then you this was totally you, and it's one of my favorite things in the game. Yeah. I absolutely loathed it in the beginning, but I really love it now.
I don't know why people just dig around in there and they draw you. Yes. Yeah.
Well, you have like a person. Well, we had a guy play the other night who he never drew a yellow and was just like cursing the moment of his birth, like, oh, I can't believe. And then another player drew 5 and drew 4 of the 9 yellows on their draw of 5. So yeah, but it's again, it's that falling forward thing that we were talking about, I think maybe in another one of the videos. So what are some of the other things we can do? We can go gamble.
Yeah, sure. There's a cantina there. You roll dice. You take your chances. But the cool thing about that, and that brings us sort of to the gear cards, is that these gear cards, they tell you when you can play them. And once you play them, you put them in your discard pile, and they give you a certain bonus. By starting your turn beside a pylon, we talked about that earlier, that's how you get all those back. And that's like kind of a little mini Concordia system. It's not the first time I pirated stuff from Concordia, but the idea is that, like, you have these set of gear cards, you play them, you pick them back up at certain intervals by kind of going out of your way just a little bit, so there's an opportunity cost behind it. But the more of these gear cards that you get, whenever you buy them, for example, for resources at the bazaar or whatever, it gives you more of those, so you can pick all those up and then continue to play them. Every one of them gives you just a little bit more value. So we're at the cantina, and maybe we play this Omni Kit, this card that everyone starts with, right? It says before you roll, that's when you play it, you roll +1 die. Okay, so that gives you more and better chances at the cantina, or maybe it's when you scrap for resources at the scrapyard, or maybe during a fight. This is like a little, an Omni Kit. It's like a
useful.
Toolcase. Yeah, obviously, definitionally useful, right? So that the dice tower is really where a lot of the action happens. And we talked about this a little bit in another video, but the dice tower is our little central component with the trays. I'm going to see if I can set this up all over everything. There we go. The idea is that the results of the dice change based on the challenge that you're going after, right? So let's say we're at the scrapyard, right? The scrapyard says to roll 2 dice, and you draw that many resources from the bag. Now let's say we play that Omni Kit. Before you roll, add 1 die. So instead of 2 dice, roll 3. That's 50% more dice, Travis.
Whoa. Math.
It's a lot. So we take these, we clear this out first because we don't want to make a mess. And you just dump all the dice that you're rolling, whether it's multiple kinds or whatever, you just dump them all in. And these dice, they have the critical faces, which means they count as double, or they have the blank faces, which means they count just as what their value is. There's 2 values you really care about in this dice tower. The first is the red number, and that's the damage that is being dealt or taken. If you're rolling alone, this represents like the hazards you're facing out in the wild, right? In this situation, you have 2 dice that are in damage zones, so you take 2 damage. That's it. If you ever drop to 0, it's bad news. What happens, Travis?
There's these little cards called defeat cards. There's 6 of them. Most of the time what ends up happening is you get hurt. If you're in the middle of a fight, you lose because you kind of overdid it, and then you wake up in the hospital. And the clinic. The clinic's thing is you just spin an action and you get all your vitality back. The problem with the clinic is it's kind of in the dead center of the board. And you don't always want to go there. Interestingly, we've seen players be like, man, I got a job where I want to be over the way you're here and I want to get to the clinic. Right. I wonder if I could get knocked out on my turn.
Right.
And then go to the clinic as a consequence and complete my job. So like there's even those little cool moments. But then there's other terrible stuff in there too.
Yeah.
And good stuff.
Yeah. You don't always go there, right? It's like when you call an ambulance to get a trip downtown, right? No problem. So that's like the damage matters is basically where we're at, right? We roll the dice. We're at the scrapyard. The other number that matters is the blue number, which is strength, and that's the value that you care about in whatever check. Yeah, with those same muscles. The strength that you roll in this case at the scrapyard, that tells you how many resources you draw from the bag. So in this situation, we have 2 dice that are in the 2 strength zone. So each of these blanks counts as 2 strength. But this one up here is a critical in the 1 strength zone, meaning it counts as double. So you have a total of 6 draws from the bag. That's a lot of resources. You only have 8, so that's a ton.
Only 1 yellow.
Right? So you scrap here, you take 2 damage, you draw 6 resources, and then you go on a shopping spree.
Boom.
Just buy everything that you ever wanted, right? So like that's one of the uses for the dice tower, but we're talking about combat too, right? So whenever you roll against an enemy, you're going to take the blue dice and the white dice together, and then your combat stats are determined by your weapons. So why don't you talk about the weapons a little bit?
So the weapons are going to tell you how many dice you roll, and they're going to tell you what kind of an ability you get, like a little bonus. There's 2 starter weapons. There's the mag blade and the pulse pistol. One gives you an extra strength after you roll. One lets you deal an extra damage after you roll. But the cool thing is, throughout the game, you can modify your weapon. You can buy these other weapon cards, and you can slot them on top, and that'll make your weapon better. Or you could buy a weapon that is just better, and you could take an old thing like a mag blade, which is really basic, and then now it gets some functionality up here.
Yeah.
And there's like a little kind of almost like a set threshold on these. So you can't have more than one icon type of a mod. So I can't have two little green blade icons. I can only have one. So if I were to get another green blade icon, if it were to be better, I would probably override it and get rid of another one. So the idea is in a lot of these games we see where like you'll get stuff and you only ever have like a primary weapon. This allows you to just kind of make your stuff better incrementally.
So instead of taking weapons, you get a new one, you throw the old one in the trash. Now you're like putting modifications on these weapons, just turning them into like weird things. So it's always an upgrade, or not always, but like there's a ceiling on it, but you're generally upgrading. So in combat, your weapon determines how many dice you roll. If you have the mag blade, then you roll 3 dice, and of course if you play like your Omni kit, you get another die. Whatever enemy you're facing off against, it'll tell you how many dice it rolls, and it'll also show you what other abilities that it has. Travis is looking for one right now. They're somewhere in there. We believe in it. So if you're fighting against, for example, the Badland Glutton, right? It has this little combat bar here, and it shows you how many dice it rolls, and it shows you the little ability that thing has, and it also shows you an overwhelm value. That's why you care about dealing damage. We talked about the damage that you deal and the damage that you roll. That's why you care about the damage that you roll against non-player kind of things.
It's like kind of doing your like Mortal Kombat fatality. You're pulling off your really cool,
If you overwhelm the enemy, you get a better outcome. Usually a little bit more rewarding or whatever it is. The context of the overwhelm changes depending on what fight you're in. But for this case, this would give you a different thing. You can also spend a little vision token to turn off those abilities. Down here, we're on the Badland Glutton, not the Sanctioned Turncoat.
Same diff.
So normally the Badland Glutton would say double all damage that you take from this. It only rolls a few dice, but it's very toothy. It has a lot of teeth, I guess.
Right? He's gluttonous.
He's highly
He's
gluttonous.
Badlandish.
He only wants to eat you. So you can spend a certain token type to turn that ability off, which might stop you from dying. That could be cool, but if you do that, you just have to do it before the other roll. So in this case, he rolls 3 dice, you roll 3 dice. Let's do it. We're going to roll these. The first thing you do once you roll the dice, these all came all clustered together. They can go all over the place, right? But the first thing you care about is the damage you're dealing to each other. Right now, the Badland Glutton, if the Badland Glutton is the blue dice, he would be dealing 1 damage to you. Okay. Now, if you were at 1 health, then you would draw your defeat card immediately, and that'll usually tell you you're not going to win the fight, right? You got knocked out. The Badland Glutton ate you, right? So this would be 1 damage, or doubled if, for example, you didn't turn that ability off, right? And then you would deal your damage to it, which just means you're going to check the damage you're dealing against its overwhelmed target. Okay. Once you've done that, you're going to compare the strength. So those blue numbers are what we care about next. The blue numbers under the white dice, and then the blue numbers under the blue dice here, right? So we have both of these. All of these dice are in the 1 strength tier. So we have a couple of criticals as well. Remember, those count as double. So here the white dice have a total of 4 strength, and then the blue dice also have a total of 4 strength. The active player always wins ties, right? Yeah, there's also the ability of the mag blade here. Thanks for the reminder, Charles, which adds an additional strength after you roll. So the white dice actually have +1 strength there, so they would win even more.
Yeah, and then there'd be a little entry, and it'll tell you, like a little narrative, like you kill the thing, it falls on the ground, and maybe some stuff falls out of it, or you discover something weird about it, or maybe it hurts you, and it runs around the planet and then starts hurting other people. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that could happen. But this is kind of the mechanical and engineering centerpiece of the game, I would say.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of other mechanics and stuff like that, but we talked about the action system. We talked about your resolve stuff, and that's pretty much like the foundation for all this stuff. Like, a lot of the other systems in this are like really context-based. They can change based on the stories or based on player actions or whatever. They can kind of appear in the game later, or you just don't even have to care about them until something calls on them.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like I said, there's texture. So, like, for example, landmarks are just a place that you go. But sometimes landmarks get better. Mm-hmm. Sometimes landmarks are worse.
Sometimes your feats care about the landmarks. And they say, you need to go here to do this, right?
Yeah, like there's these little transponder tokens. It's the only way you can interact with this location. There is no inherent way for you to get a transponder in the game. Right. You can't just have one. Like, there's no vending machine button that you go. You can't just buy it at the store. And, in this particular instance, we have a card that says you can buy it at the store, which makes this card really special, especially for $1. So $1. Yeah. So there is a lot of like textural stuff in the game. Like visions let you turn off the battle bar, but then there's some encounters that'll come out, and they'll like be bad. You could spend a vision and cancel that, or you can spend a vision and make it happen to someone else, or you can spend a vision and the reward that you get, you can double the reward that you get. So there's a lot of like resources that have a use, and then they have an improved use, which I think is really neat. Like with the whole little yellow thing that I hated that I love now, the little yellow cube thing.
Yeah. A lot of it's just a surprise. Like as the stories kind of unfold, you say, oh, this means this now, right? Or just in this context, right? So
So we've got hand management, right? We've got like tableau building. We've got this little track, and there's like timing and as to when to do that. Like, sure, gaining legend is amazing; it's always good. But if you can time it, you can time it just right. You can get even more out of it. We've got like personal goals. We've got these kind of like little quests that you can go. Sometimes public objectives will come up. We've got resource management. Right. We've got card acquisition. And a lot of this stuff is things that you've seen in other games, but we'd like to think that we tried to like thoughtfully and meaningfully interwoven this into the story element of the game, which plays a really, really big part of the game.
Yeah. So it's fun.
It's pretty fun.
I don't hate it.
So we have to ask each other a question now.
Yeah, what's your question?
Man, there were some good ideas for questions by someone off camera.
We're talking about mechanics. Remember, this is the mechanics.
Oh, this is the mechanics thing.
Yes.
So what is a mechanic, and what's a mechanic that you love that you still haven't put into a game that you've worked on personally?
Actually, I have a good story about this. I'm sure everyone in the world by now has heard of Arc Nova, which I like that game. It's a wonderful.
Who is Mark Nova?
Mark Nova is he's some guy. Yeah. Arc Nova is probably, I'm sure it's number 1 on BGG by now.
It's 11 last time I looked.
It's probably number 5 or something. But it's like a big Euro game and like a big strategy game with just like a lot of engine building and a lot of stuff. But it has a really cool action selection system where you choose a card on your action row. You take that action X number of times. The farther up the row you take that action more. And then you pick that card up and move it to the end, and everything scooches up. So there's kind of like a natural, like a flow to how you use it. And that's cool. Like that's really neat. The first time I saw it was in Civilization: A New Dawn, which came out I think 2015, 2016 or so. And it did the same thing with the action system. And I when I first saw it, I was like, I gotta use this. I gotta make a game. And then I spent too long, and then Arc Nova came out. So thanks, Arc Nova. Thanks, Mark.
Mark Nova.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to make a dice worker placement game.
Yeah.
Always.
I would not have guessed that. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Are you being serious? Based off of me? I told you the other day I bought Alien Frontiers for like the 5th time. Like I keep getting rid of it, and I'm like, man, this game is too basic. Man, I really like that game. Man, this game is but like I still own Kingsburg. Mm-hmm. I still like I freaking love dice worker placement. I've never made a dice worker placement game. I don't even know if I've made a worker placement game technically.
Let's make one.
You want to?
Next? Yeah, let's do it.
4X is another one.
Next video.
I want to do 4X. You want to work on a big messy 4X game with me?
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah, those would be the goals for me on those.
Cool.
Done talking. Bye.